Welcome to A Moment of Bach, where we take our favorite moments from the composer's vast musical output, just a minute's worth or even a few seconds, and show you why we think they are remarkable. We are your hosts, Alex and Christian Giebert.
And today we have guest Alec Santamaria here. And Alec, I know you as a violist who frequently plays viola in orchestra stuff at my church. Tell us more about yourself, though, besides just my perspective of you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful being back here. It feels like Christmas came early.
Yeah.
Yet not early enough, given the last year. But glad to be back with you guys in person.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Finally.
well, I don't know if we had met at UCLA, but we definitely had Christian and I contacts from there.
That's right. Yeah.
I graduated from there in 2017. I grew up in LA, just the northern LA area. Started playing violin when I was 6, viola when I was in 7th grade. I just fell in love with the tone of it. It really kind of reinvigorated my musical interest, even just being so young. Went to LA County High School for the Arts. Have appeared at Tanglewood, Idlewild.
Nice.
Cool. Made a European debut in the middle of college, just playing chamber music, doing things like that. Music has taken me as far and wide as I could have ever hoped, and something in me just is saying the best is yet to come. So
That's cool.
Yeah. I particularly like that you started on violin and the reason that you went to viola was because you like the tone. Because it's I always like to hear that side of things, especially when somebody moves from one of the more common instruments to the less common instrument. Viola ends up being kind of I don't know, maybe underappreciated. What do you think? Do you think it's underappreciated?
absolutely. So
Yeah.
well, I guess a little plug for my teacher at UCLA, Richard O'Neill. He just won the Grammy for Best Classical Instrumental Solo Performance.
Yeah.
He began his acceptance speech with, "This is a great day for the viola."
Yeah.
He's the second violist to have won that award, the first being Kim Kashkashian a decade or two ago. And it was Stefanidis' viola concerto, a living American composer.
Cool.
I really think that's just amazing that, because it's viola doesn't have the most big concertos, sonatas that are known. I mean, there are definitely examples, from Telemann to the big concertos of the 20th century, and just amazing sonatas. From Hindemith to, I mean, there's just there is repertoire there, but I mean, it's originally a viola piece. That's what's so exciting about it. That's what gets me so excited about Rebecca Clark sonata. It's 100 years old, and she knew the viola. Hindemith knew the viola, and but going back to how I found viola, how I switched to it. It was actually from Bach. The cello suites. I always loved the cello suites. I loved anything by Bach that I would hear in Suzuki, I had a Suzuki CD because I played books 1 through 4, on violin and then viola. But when I found out that you could play the cello suites, just an octave up, it has the same strings.
Right.
I was really excited about that. So
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so for the listeners who are wondering how this works, Bach did write these suites for cello, but cello and viola have strings of the same notes. It's just that the viola strings sound an octave higher. So if you rewrite the music, you can basically play most of them just on the viola, right, Alec?
exactly, and the voicing on the strings is the same. So really, if you're going to play the cello suites on any instrument other than cello, viola, would be the most natural choice. And Bach did play the viola.
He totally did.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little bit when we talked about Brandenburg 3, and we both picked. So typically the format is one of us will pick a moment we love, then we'll both chat about it. The next week, the other one of us will talk about it. We'll both chat. But this time we just for whatever reason we decided let's each pick a moment from Brandenburg 3, Movement 3 that we liked the best. And then when we came to record, we both had already just picked the same exact moment, which is the viola solo. It's the part in Brandenburg 3 Movement 3.
Oh. Yeah. It's like 8 bars long.
Yeah, it's pretty short, and it repeats once. There's a repeat, so
Yeah.
you get to hear it a couple times. And the prevailing theory seems to be that Bach played that part and led the performance playing that
That's
part.
a cool theory. I don't know if it's true, but it
Right.
definitely sounds like he wrote the viola 1 part for himself. It seems to make it's got some really nice little solo.
I mean, and if Bach ever played these suites himself, he likely would have played it on viola.
That's true.
So,
Maybe when he wrote these, he played them on viola, to try them out and stuff. And yeah.
So I have my viola on me.
Yeah.
I do need to tune it, but I'd love to share some Bach with you
Yes.
guys.
Yeah.
So that'd be great.
So we tune our instruments now the same way they would have done it centuries ago,
Yeah.
using an app
I-
on your phone.
No, I was just gonna say though, because I tuned from the A and then tuning through double stops, and of course each double stop will be bigger than equal temperament would be, and that's a thing that I've always kind of scratched my head over. In particular, recently with starting to play with ensembles again, it's the way I tuned when it was just me by myself. It's different from when I hear an oboist or a violinist in an orchestra. And I want to make sure that everything is as close to even tempered as can be, so that my open strings, everything can just resonate with all other instruments.
So when you tune by yourself, are you doing a little more of the just temperament kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I am, just because I'm not so worried about playing with others. That has actually an interesting effect on voicing, how things are going to sound.
Which strings you're using for certain chords and stuff.
Yeah, or just how each string sounds when I use it.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it in episode 6. I want to say it was when we talked about the well-tempered clavier. I think that was episode 6, and we talked about how equal temperament is used now, and it was brand new in Bach's day, and it is basically the space between C and C sharp is the exact same as the space between C sharp and D and D sharp, and etc. And it's not how it used to be. And what Alec is talking about, I think, right here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that tuning your instrument when you're playing by yourself, you have the luxury to sort of tune it the old way a little more, which is more perfect, really, with the intervals. They're actually the perfect ratios. But the reason why we don't do that anymore is because you can't play in all these different keys when you do that. It makes certain keys sound out of tune, whereas it makes other ones, the more common ones, sound really good. But the trade-off there, now we just use equal temperament, because the trade-off is like you're saying, playing with all these other instrumentalists, then you guys are really always going to be in tune no matter what key you're playing in. So that just makes sense. But it's kind of sad. You do lose something. And when you hear it, or when you hear these groups play in original just intonation, it's really cool. It's really nice. It's a purer sound on some of these chords.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not and it's not something that we dive very deep into as string players, studying at as music majors at a university or a conservatory. It's a great untapped thing, I think. Except of course in early music ensembles.
Yeah.
I think those ensembles really they try to go they go all in terms of whatever the theory is as to how whichever composer, how they tuned, and trying to recreate that and the effects, and that it defies, I think, our modern ear in saying, when we think, oh, this is in tune, this is not in tune.
Yeah.
The reference pitches they're not set on this absolute scale. There's room. There's, I don't know. It's complicated. The whole story of intonation.
Yeah. What's it? Could you give an example by playing about I know you've just tuned your instrument, so I don't know. Did you tune it with an equal temperament, or are you tuning more of a?
I tuned it key? more kind of more justly. So these are basically perfect fifths. I imagine the keyboard will have like a narrower fifth here between A and D, D and G and C. But so if I play, okay, well, also this instrument viola is fretless. The cello is fretless. You know, the violin family, it's fretless. So I can tune. I have in Suite 1 in G major. Bach begins a lot of the movements, the prelude, the sarabande, the allemande, the minuet, with some version of this chord. Now I want to tune this note, B, the third, in tune with this D, as well as this G. Which I think on a keyboard this B would be higher. I don't know where exactly, but yeah, and
yeah, you can hear the difference there. The last B you just played was a little higher.
Yeah, and it's bright. You know, that chord, it just has a different personality. If I bring it up, yeah, it's really like. But if I really try to make this beat blend with the bass notes below it, it has a warmth to it. Yeah. So
cool.
That's very interesting. And that's like another way to think of this is like, Alec, the way that you tuned it lower is like the acoustic way that it actually is like naturally in tune, right?
Yeah.
And that explains why it's warmer and more natural.
And there's a blend to the chord, and like there are notes that ring out, which aren't present if you're tuning in equal temperament. You know, the waveforms are like lining up in this nice proportion.
Yeah, and it has to do with the overtune series, which we kind of mentioned in previous episodes, right?
It's really math, really.
Yeah.
And a good way to summarize it would be that the compromise, which you have to do when you have all 12 notes fixed, like for instance on a piano or organ or a guitar that has frets, let's say.
A well-tempered keyboard, right. That's why it's called that, yeah.
And it's equally tuned. The compromise means that when you play certain chords or harmonies together, we don't really know this. We don't really think about it these days, and we're so used to it, but they're not exactly in tune, right? They're not to the most natural degree because they can't be. And so a major third from a lower note is going to be a little bit too big and therefore a little bit sharp. And like Alec was saying, you can use it to your advantage to make something sound brighter, but to make it sound warmer and darker, it's this thing that you can't do on the piano, because the piano is fixed. So with the piano, you can play in any different key, but all the pitches are fixed, so it has that limitation.
Yeah.
And the distances between the pitches are the same.
Yeah.
So it's Bach calls it the well-tempered clavier, not the even-tempered clavier.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this open question as to what tuning system he was using.
Yeah, it's not actually clear that he meant a perfectly equal thing.
Yeah, could it have been that it was like closer to equal but not exactly? Because the thing is that there's preludes and fugues in every key.
Yeah.
So it means that it must have sounded okay to play in all these obscure keys like C sharp minor or whatever, or F sharp major.
And different keys in the Baroque era were tied to different like emotional affectations, right? So maybe the ones that sounded a little wonky were like that on purpose.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd love to hear the well-tempered clavier played on keyboard instruments that predate it. Like on a church organ, that's centuries old, even before Bach, or just before, I guess this long-term movement to standardize pitch sets, especially with keyboard instruments.
Yeah.
This is what gets me really excited about people who play on the period instruments. And that's why Alex and I love using the recordings from the Netherlands Bach Society, because they play on period instruments like gut string playing and stuff like that. And their tuning is also I guess, probably a pretty well-informed guess at some of the Bach tuning. And most of the big works I think that we've encountered so far, Alex, have been about a half step lower than how they are notated in modern day pitch, right?
Yeah, because just playing along with these examples on the piano, we noticed that, and we basically just end up playing them a half step lower. Couple exceptions, some of the organ works we looked at Passacaglia in C minor, and for whatever reason he plays that on an instrument that's like tuned to C minor when he's playing it, But the other ones, if you're listening, and those of you with perfect pitch that have been listening to the episodes mides be a little annoyed at some of this stuff, because we'll say like, and then they sing an A and then I'll play a G sharp and everybody's like, what? Perfect pitch people might be.
Perfect pitch is an interesting thing, and I don't have it. Alex, you don't have it. And
I do.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of wish I didn't, but...
Right, so
yeah.
Alec,
it's a blessing and a curse,
have
right?
It. So
yeah,
it's a really mixed bag, and I've had a lot of students in theory and musicianship classes who have perfect pitch, and they have a completely different set of challenges in terms of hearing and listening.
Makes some things easier and some things harder, right, Alec?
Yeah, I mean, so when I say that I have perfect, well, generally I would prefer absolute pitch because, my perception, my human ear, is never going to be perfect. But it's funny, my relationship with pitches, because also I don't know what Netherlands Bach Society's A is, maybe A415.
I think it's
which
around
is like
there.
a bit, which is a little bit bigger than a half step, or somewhere.
It sounds to me very close to a half step.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I can still hear their open A's, and hear the timbre of an open A string.
Okay.
The resonance of an open string is different than the resonance of a closed string. So here's my open A string. The brightest string at its full length on the viola. Now here's the same pitch, A440, played on the D string. Open string, closed string. The same pitch has a different sound, and then let's see if I can find it on the... That's the same pitch on the G string, and then now on the C string.
What the listeners
on my C string never gets low.
What the listeners can't see is that for each of these bigger strings, he has to put his finger up higher on the fretboard, so it's harder to tune up there, right, Alec?
Yeah, definitely. The intervals get smaller as you go up the string. All four strings are the same length. So each string just gets thicker for lower pitches.
Yeah.
So when I put my finger on the fingerboard, I'm shortening the string to alter the pitch.
Right. So, and it's interesting that, Alec, the bigger and bigger strings you use to play that same note, the tone quality kept getting like more veiled and darker and maybe warmer.
You can kind of tell it's a bigger string just by listening to it.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's more going on.
It got less bright and piercing for sure.
And also with the closed string, you can use vibrato. So. No vibrato available on the open string.
Right. Yeah. So what he just played was vibrato of the note A on the D string, and then he switched at the end there to the open string A, where he could not play vibrato.
So vibrato being this altering of the pitch. So in modern string technique, I'm here having my middle finger on the D string, playing the pitch A, which is a fifth above the open D, rolling my knuckle back so that the tip of my finger, the contact point on the fingerboard, is a little bit lower. It makes the string slightly longer. Almost a half step lower. Or you can vary the oscillations. So you can have narrower vibrato, shimmery. You can have wider vibrato. That was another thing that I noticed about viola vibrato, is that because the strings are bigger, generally your vibrato is a little bit wider. But it depends on what sound you're going for, whether you want something nervous or something wide and broad, whatever it is.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of like those kind of old recordings of of classical music from the earlier 20th century, and a lot of the time, or in film score, a lot of the times the vibrato will be really, especially in a solo instrument, will be really obvious. And I think they probably just learned to just kind of exaggerate it because it'd be heard on worse quality mics than what we have now. And you got to kind of exaggerate stuff.
I mean, it's grainy and it's and it has this amazing vibrato.
Yeah.
I mean, and in terms of interpretation of Bach, you know, of any piece, but you know, I've got the Bach scores in front of me. Like, I mean, different pieces would be played in different ways. So here's a Minuet 2 in G minor from the first suite. You know, I generally use very little vibrato on this. I mean, the story of string playing in the last century can be told in how soloists play Bach. So, I mean, these works, the cello suites, there's no extant copy of the manuscript. This very edition, I'm using the Peters edition, so you guys can see like how messed up it is from like a pear that was in my backpack and ink blot, you know.
It's well used.
It really
well
is.
Used.
So if this version adapted for viola takes from 4 different sources, from Anna Magdalena, his wife's manuscript, and from a few other sources. But we don't have the manuscript here. These pieces were largely forgotten. It's a question as to whether these pieces were even played and for whom during Bach's lifetime, you know. But then one day, Pablo Casals, the Spanish cellist, found like an old copy, maybe one like this, at a music store, started playing them, became a very famous soloist, really brought this in the early 20th century into the limelight that it surely deserves and enjoys now.
Cool.
But okay, so a soloist, I'm no period performer, but here's what it would sound like if I put in more vibrato. So there's just very different ways, and then so I was using closed strings for a kind of dark sound there. I could play in lower positions, have the strings be longer.
Yeah, cool. We've talked a little bit about the choices that get made when you're going to perform this music, like articulation and dynamics and things like that. Yeah. And I don't think we've even really touched on this side of it and talking about the positions on the strings and things and how much vibrato on the strings. It's just, there's so much detail.
And bowings. So you have the left hand, which is the intonation, and that can be expressive in its own ways. What does a major third sound like? How much vibrato do I put in? Do I use an open or a closed string? And then you have bowings. It all comes from the right hand, from the bow. So I'm looking now at Minuet 1 from the same suite. My understanding of minuets has changed in the last 4 years, maybe only subtly, but so the markings I have here are what I made before a recital that I played 4 years ago of the first 4 cello suites, which by the way are on YouTube. And
nice.
So I would probably choose different bowings and fingerings now, just because I'm a different player than I was 4 years ago. Yeah. So I'll just play some just from here as written.
Nice. Cool. Love that.
So just going through it in real time, I'm just following the notes, the fingerings, the bowings that I wrote, and I didn't follow all of my own notes and bowings and fingerings. There's an intuitive sense I have with this piece. I first learned it like 10 years ago. The prelude a couple years before that, when I was very fresh to the viola, just really wanted to learn it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could tell you what exactly I would change. I would try to start more phrases on down bows to have that nice minuet feel. Strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. But I'm still, that said, I'm using a modern bow. It's heavier than the bows that were used in Bach's time. It's longer, and the tip of the bow has quite a lot of strength in it. Just as the frog does. The frog has even more, of course. It's closest to my hand. So you can start phrases on up bows with the same strength of a down bow if you need to, but in general, I try to stay informed by my understanding of how the bow was used in Bach's time, which is not to say that I'm gonna try to play in such a way as they played back then, but there's like a hybrid, like right now it's a hybrid time for Bach because of the movement of early music, which I don't know when it really began in modern times, perhaps the 1960s or so, but and because you go back to recordings like from the 40s, from the 30s, they have that big vibrato, big soloistic sound, trying to like fill the hall or something like that, or trying to like really blare out for the one microphone you have in the room.
Then that might be a holdover from like the Bach revival stuff that was started by like Mendelssohn and others, like back in the it's more like late 1800s, right? And it's like that would have, because that's during the Romantic era, it probably was like, I think that we're guessing basically that those performances felt a little more romantic in style.
Yeah, as did like things like when the Netherlands Bach Society first formed almost 100 years ago.
Yeah.
They would have been doing it the same like romantic way.
Yeah, and eventually they've sort of gotten a little more interested in creating more of the actual period experience with their performances.
Right. There's so many different ways you can interpret this old music, and good examples like Handel's Messiah. You can hear so many different versions of that. You can hear a version that's very authentic with a smaller group. Then you can hear these big old huge romantic versions with a 200 voice choir and like added parts and instruments and stuff that people were already adding to even generations after his death.
So what, Alec, is your like on the first suite? I would say if we can keep it there, unless you have another one somewhere else. But what's your favorite like moments or couple measures?
I love this question. Because I don't normally like think in these terms, but like
because as a performer you gotta learn everything really well. Exactly. You can't just
But maybe some highlights here. Well, you'll be in the first movement. So of course there's this beautiful opening. Which has that
you were talking
that chord
about
here. It's all over the first few movements here. So there's this fermata here where it gets to the lowest note. We have all the way down here. It's open C. With a C sharp up to D, which is now the highest notes in the movement so far. There's a fermata telling the player to hold that note. The C sharp now bringing us into this new key, this D. Then it goes into this little episode. this entire episode, it's such a beautiful, it's just such a beautiful moment how he goes between different keys. In my mind's eye, I can picture like a flower, like a rose, like in bloom, or in early morning as the petals of a flower would open up, would awaken. It goes through this turn, returning to this low D. We came out of this high D. Not giving an answer to this great big question maybe, or this big moment that's happened. Goes higher. Notes are close together. Returns to the depths. In G major, the original key, it doesn't sound conclusive though, because of the inversion of the chord, where we're just really big, Then kind of settles into this, so large intervals, da 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 dee dum, da da dum, ba dee da da dum, small again.
Yeah.
All those proportions in one measure. It sounds quite nicely in G, and then a couple beats later. There's all these, we got a C sharp, we got a B flat, a G sharp. We're kind of revolving chromatically around A. And so yeah, sounds like an A7 chord, a 5 of 5. Then quite safely back in D. Well, we got C.
Now we got C natural
again,
giving us,
falling
trying
back.
to bring us back to G. Yeah.
This occurs like on the offbeat, so bum dee da, so one and a 2 E and a 3 E and a da 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 bum ba da da dee da 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 dum. When I first learned this, my teacher told me to think of waterfalls cascading. I think it's a good.
It's kind of like a weightless feeling to me. It's like you've got this kind of step on the beat, but then after that you just like float off of it. It's so beautiful.
So bum dee da 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 dee da dum be da da dee da dee da dum ba da dee da 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 dum. So playing around with this kind of build, da 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 dum da 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 dum. Meanwhile, you got an A pedal. So we're in. It's like 5 of 5. So.
And this is the open string, everyone, that we were talking about earlier. The exact same string.
Everything resonating here. So again, with intonation choices, I'm gonna tune to this open A because, well, the A can't help but be this pitch. So this note here, this E, if I'm tuning it to the A, it's gonna be higher than if I were to tune it to like if I were building a C major chord, for instance. You can already hear it's too high, There's more, a more justly tempered resonant C. So, the fretless instrument, for all the pain it causes us, also is our greatest tool here. So here we go. When I hear these like sequences against open strings in Bach, I think rustic, like bagpipes or something.
Totally, folk music, like fiddle.
Yeah, totally, and that's what fiddlers do, Yeah. It's like, wow, that sounds so complicated. It's really not. I'm going. But now, and plus,
Yeah.
and that combination of left hand and right hand action. Now, within that, that's where things, that's where I can shape the phrase. Okay, I listened to you guys' episode on the first two episodes on the Brandenburg Concerto and how 3 was the magic number in the Trinity here. And what do we have here? We have the same phrase repeated thrice here. So
Yeah.
So ba-da-dee-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. So another 3.
Yeah.
Da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-dum. And then okay, I don't know how many that was right there, but so there's the ending there, like this chromatic buildup on now a D pedal, the 5. Now we're really like building up to the tonic. We had 5 of 5 for a while, now we have 5. And now like ending on this arpeggiation of the chord, which is like, it's like a higher, brighter version of this original chord that we had before. And then tuning this chord. I want that B to be nice. I want those G's to match, and here's the chord. Yeah, so.
And for the listener, like this, we're using like analytical terms here, but essentially the music has a home, a harmonic home, and that is G major. And what Alec is showing us is that the Bach spends so much time almost at home, but not quite. And that's the key of D in this case. And that prolongation that stretches out so much and so many different ways is, I think, part of what makes the music so heart-wrenchingly powerful, you know?
Yeah, and just like the inevitability of getting to that home thing. It doesn't just, like you said, Alec, it doesn't just go, when it does that chromatic thing up to the higher G, dun, 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 when it gets there, you know you're not actually done yet, because then the arpeggiation, like you said, it goes down, but it doesn't have G at the bottom yet.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And so
it still has the D at the bottom.
Yes,
yeah, the D is still enduring. So
yeah, and then he gives us another couple measures.
So okay, so here's that sequence again, maybe slowed down. So we're at that peak now, but we still have D here. Like, you couldn't end the piece there, you know? It's not like... It's like, no, we have to resolve this. Got this sus chord. This tritone. Okay, here we go. C goes down to B. F sharp goes up to G. D goes down to G. Hey, that string rang.
Because these notes are being played pretty much, most of these notes are being played separately, right, by the viola, but they're still chords. That's what's interesting, is that they're just broken up. And so each line Bach knows needs to be followed to its conclusion. The top line, in this case, needs to go up and up and up, and finally the top. The bass line, it has its own bass line, right? That needs to go to G at the end. Then there's also this inner part, which needs to resolve as well. So we know this. It could be chords, but it's even nicer the way it is, which is 3 independent lines that are broken up.
Yeah, it's amazing how with one instrument this counterpoint is existing, and it's what you've described, like managing these voices. I mean the original arpeggiation of the chord and final here. Like, I'm playing those on 3 strings. Pretty much every player does. You could conceivably play it like across just 2 strings, maybe. But there's such a beautiful ring to this. And
the
it's
G
not
and D
like,
ring together.
Yeah, and it's not like one melodic singing line. It's like, and yet it is melodic and it is singing, and it collapses like at like the turn of a dime into like a singular stepwise melody.
Yeah.
You know,
And yet, right
like
there in that measure is still very clear what the harmonic quality is of it, because those little stepwise things, whenever he starts them, it doesn't sound like suddenly it's meandering and it's lost its chord. It's just he's just so good at leading you along to the next chord. A lot of times they just kind of just like connect things, and they lead you to the next chord.
Yeah, we spoke about this in the Well-Tempered Clavier episode, where in the keyboard part, all the notes are broken up. But that's even more simple musical texture because it's just broken up chords throughout. But you can verticalize those chords and hear what it's supposed to sound like as chords, but that would make it a little bit less interesting. So the way it is now, like Alec is saying, it's brilliant counterpoint because Bach needs to use sometimes 2, sometimes 3 independent parts, and they all have to be played by one person.
All the best and most enduring music, I'm making a huge statement here, but I think it's true. All the best and most enduring music has a beauty and some kind of simplicity, but also like has a lot of complexity to dig into. It has both. And this is a perfect example of that, where it's made of these simple harmonic, like broken down. It's just like a set of chords that move from one to another, and then they go in a way you might think for this time period, and then they get to the end and they resolve. And then it's broken up into arpeggios, and then it's got all this little connecting material, and each one is its own melody that's beautiful on its own. Like you said, Alec, it's all the counterpoint of all these different things, and then all these little episodes and all these little articulation choices, really, and all this stuff. It becomes really complex.
I want to show you an example of this in a piece in from the same suite where things are less things are less fast and condensed. So we have here the Sarabande, and it's as Christian you described, where it's opening with 3 voices, but it's also just it's going in and out of like this kind of singular singing line, and then this like underlying bass. So here's what that is. So. So there we have multiple voices interacting this bass. So in the score, we have the lower 2 notes of this 3-note chord being beamed downward, with the highest note being beamed upward. So it's as if there are 2 voices, or maybe 1 voice on top of a 2-voice accompaniment. Of course, I like to. A lot of people like to break it up, or play it as just like one resonant sound. But this another common practice, and I think which falls in line with the way it's beamed, is to let the highest note ring out. have like perhaps that F sharp belongs to a lower voice. Meanwhile, you have. But it doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah, that's what's so great about this. It's kind of like they meet in the middle for that F sharp.
Yeah.
So you have that E, those middle voices, D, E, and then it comes up to that F sharp, da, da, da. But then it's also, that F sharp is also coming off of the top. Da, da, C,
yeah. So B, C, B, F sharp.
Yeah, because it's on the top, it does feel like that's what's happening with the melody. Yeah, they meet in the middle there.
Yeah, it'd be so much less interesting if it was actually three people playing, because then it would just be chords. It would be beautiful. But the fact that it works this way, it's a little more ambiguous. Which voices belong to which, how we listen to them. I think a really interesting question in appreciating music of this time period is like, what's in the background, texture-wise? What's in the foreground? Of course, Alec, you probably think about this question a lot as the performer. But sometimes as a listener, it's interesting too. It's like, well, I remember how the melody goes like this. But are you there's often a bass line, which is itself melodic in this time period. It's very important, the bass line is. And then these internal parts also have their own rules. So there's a lot of different ways to listen to this music, I would say.
And this relates to the instruments that Bach, chose to write these pieces. So this suite is for cello. It's a bass instrument. It has that warmth, So the bass line is super prominent. And then and these are dance movements. This is a saraband, which is a dance in 3, and it has So it has dancing on top of the bass, that melody.
So it's also a dance form, so it also has to conform to this element of timing too, which is interesting too, because this kind of suite is a dance suite. You had the minuet, you've got the saraband. These are all old forms of dancing that Bach and people around his time period took in an artistic way to write these sort of more concert pieces. I'm not sure anyone's actually trying to dance to this,
right?
But it's a great jumping off point for Bach to write something like this in that framework,
And so again, we don't know if these pieces were even played during Bach's lifetime, but if they were, they probably weren't danced to. These dances were centuries old. He was this is Bach. Writing early music, basically,
Yeah.
These are old forms, but so given that knowledge, and given that in my case I'm not playing this with a dancer, I don't have to adhere to 1 and 2 and 3, and this allows me to bring out what I want to bend time in these ways. Especially when I have big chords. It's not like on piano where I can just play the 3 notes all at once, boom, I mean, if I were playing it pizzicato, it would be easier to do that, even with 3 fingers. Something like that. But with the bow, I have to do it like this. I can take more time there if I want. Now, there's obviously a limit to this. It is written in this particular rhythm. I want to respect that. I do like to play this with a metronome so that I can get a sense of like where beats would fall if I were, playing it in time, if I were playing it to be danced to. Also, with the sarabande, there's a lot of emphasis on the second beat. So again, going back to choosing bowings, like I start this movement up bow. One, two.
Yeah, and so for the listeners that don't know string instruments that well, you're starting the first note up bow so that you can land on the second beat down bow so you can accentuate the second beat. A down bow's typically more an accentuated thing. It's like, and this is a very clumsy analogy, but it's like, imagine sawing like a piece of wood or something. If you are, right? If you're bringing it toward you, wouldn't that be analogous to the down bow, right? Yeah. So it feels more powerful. And then the up bow, it still works, but I think when you're pulling toward you, it feels more powerful.
It's like bicep versus tricep.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so this is this touches upon this great enigma now for me as a viola player versus when cellists play this, or I guess basses for that matter, but they have their own set of challenges with this piece. So, okay, so the cool thing about viola, the convenient thing, is that I still have C, G, D, and A as my strings, just like a cello does. Only now my bow is upside down. A cellist will have their instrument pointed downward to the floor so that on the down bow, on the right side of your instrument, on the down bow side of your instrument, you have the C string, the lower string. So I'm not good at all playing cello style, but if I can pull the bow and down bow, and then answer it, wow, like that. Everything's just flipped from.
Yeah, it's completely the other way around.
Yeah.
In terms of the way the instrument is held.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like the bowings, it's like, so what does that mean for our bowings? Well, a down bow's still strong. The directionality of it is different. Which maybe can affect us more in like in faster movements. But I mean, even in this slower movement, so something I haven't like. Something we string players don't do enough is like play the same pieces for players who don't play our same instrument. Yeah, I need to sit down with a cellist just to see what bowings they're choosing and how and why it would be different from mine.
Yeah.
So and fingerings too.
Do you ever compare your performance styles with cello performances just to see?
Yeah, I do, and again, not enough. I mean, there is a way to sit down with the best cellists in the world, and that's just by watching their videos, right?
Yeah.
So, and well, the things that like impress me the most are just the styles that they play. Misha Maisky, like lots of vibrato, yeah, kind of rough. Rostropovich, also on that side, I guess those are just two Russians whose lifetimes largely overlap, I guess, but versus like a period performance of it. So yeah, with the prelude, I think I have the most, like, I've spent the most time watching players do that. It's bowings really that are the most different. I think I remembered one of those two cellists like using more separate detached bows than I did. And maybe at a faster tempo as well. I like to slur things a little bit more. Some players, cellists or violists or anybody, might use even longer slurs. Just naturally, these different bowings are like lending themselves to faster and slower tempos.
Yeah.
But so, versus
Yeah, those last three you played, they just have totally different characters.
Yeah.
The first one was so much more smooth, and you just had it down for half the measure and up the half the measure. And the second one was a little more tight sounding. The third one was really detached sounding,
Right.
because you're switching off that sawing motion sooner. Yeah.
And now I'm curious again as to like how cellists bow it. I think you know it's generally still a down bow, just that like the directions are reversed and what you're doing with the bow is different. So yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. And now Alec plays for us here the minuets from Cello Suite No. 1 on the viola. First we hear Minuet No. 1 in G major, then Minuet No. 2 in G minor, then back to the G major minuet da capo, literally meaning the head, go back to the beginning. Also, tune in for a special bonus episode that we're going to release tomorrow, which will be a little bit more of the Alec interview where we go into a little greater technical detail for another 15 minutes or so. All right.
Yeah.
I love it. Ornamentation on the second time.
If this introduction to a musical moment has inspired you to hear the rest of the cello suites, please see the link in the episode description to see the performance of those by the Netherlands Bach Society. Do you want to hear our new episodes as we release them? Find us on your podcast app and hit subscribe. We also have a Facebook page, an Instagram, and a website, amomentofbach.com.
So Alex, what's next week?
Next week, we'd like to return to the Mass in B minor. The last time we touched on this was in episode 1, when we looked at the final movement of it. And for next week, we'll take a look at the Credo, which is the first movement of the second half of the whole work.
And huge thanks to Alec for coming down with his viola and showing us all this awesome stuff. Thanks, Alec.
Thanks, Alec.
Thank you guys. Until next time, enjoy those moments.